Hello everyone, welcome to the Teaching English webinar for teacher educators, in which Ana Maria Pinter and Rama Matthew will give us practical advice on fostering self-directed learning and autonomy in English language teacher education. My name is Shirin Soyaz and I'll be your moderator today. Thank you all so much for joining this live event. Before we start our session, I'd like to share a number of quick housekeeping reminders with you. While waiting, please share with us in the Q&A where you are from. If you work in pre-service teacher education, type pre-service. If you work in in-service, type in-service in the Q&A. This session is being recorded and a recording of the webinar will be available on Teaching English in the next couple of days. The link to the certificate will be provided in the thank you email that you'll receive tomorrow. Finally, you'll have a chance to ask questions during this session. Please use the Q&A to ask our presenters your questions, and we'll be using the chat for announcements. So let me introduce our speakers today. So Ana Maria Pinter is a reader at the University of Warwick in the UK. Her research interests focus on second and foreign language education for children, task-based second language teaching, and engaging children actively in research. She's published widely in the area of teaching English to children. She's currently joint series editor of Early Language Learning in School Context and the author of a new book entitled Engaging Children in Applied Linguistics Research by Cambridge University Press, due to come out in 2023. And Rama Matthew is an ELT consultant and retired professor of education from the University of Delhi, where she was the Dean of the Faculty of Education. She's been involved in several teacher development and assessment projects and published articles and books. She was a lead mentor for British Council ELT classroom research projects. Her research interests include language assessment, teaching English to young learners, CPD for teachers, multilingual education, and making English accessible to learners online. So I'd like to invite our presenters now. We hope you enjoy the session. Over to you, Ana Maria and Rama.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope everyone can hear me. So what I'm going to do is just share our slides first of all. Okay.
Yes, we can see it, Ana Maria.
Okay, great. So I've got a full screen now. So I can't see Rama yet, but she will be joining me a little later anyway, so that's okay. So welcome everybody to this session. Thanks very much to the organizers for inviting us. We're really looking forward to sharing our work with you in the audience, and we look forward to your questions and comments on what we've got prepared today for you. So we, as Sirin so kindly introduced us, we work in two different universities. I'm at the University of Warwick, and Professor Rama Matthew has recently retired from the University of Delhi. And we've been having this ongoing collaboration regarding this project, but also other projects. But today what we're doing is we're focusing our talk on this particular publication, which I understand has been publicized for you. So we're hoping that some of you had a look at this. This is Children and Teachers as Co-Researchers in Indian Primary English Classrooms, a publication that is a result of a research project that we facilitated together over several years, going back 2015, when this was actually a British Council ELTRP funded project that we worked on in India. So who are we? We are, first of all, university lecturers, but we are also teacher trainers. We have a deep interest in teacher education. And we are also teachers with classroom experience. I think I speak for both of us when I say that we constantly go back to classrooms and work with classrooms as well as with teachers. And we're interested in research and practice and the relationship between the two. The project that we're talking about today involved learners and teachers as partners and co-researchers in investigating classrooms. And I guess the main point or the main takeaway message of today is going to be about how powerful it can be for teachers to investigate classrooms with their learners as active participants. And this is something I think that teacher educators should and could encourage in their own context. So get teachers to investigate what's happening in their classrooms by involving the learners in active roles. So this is what really all of today is going to be about. So we'll be constantly looking at parallels between learners, teachers, and teacher educators, because we think that if learners are supposed to be self-directed and autonomous and interested and active, then really teachers need to have a mirror to look at. Am I self-directed, autonomous, and am I investigating things in my own classroom? And equally, teacher educators should also have a mirror in front of us. If I'm encouraging the learners and the teachers to be autonomous and self-reliant and active in investigating issues in classrooms, then surely as a role model, my job is to do the same. So I thought we would start just very, very briefly with this slide, which is about, of course, autonomous language learners in ELT, which has got a very rich and very interesting literature. I'm mainly talking about people like David Little and his colleagues like Leni Dam in Denmark, who've written a great deal about what autonomous learners look like. Well, they're highly motivated and they want to do things for themselves. They always have a choice in the classroom as to what they are going to do. There's an important emphasis on the power of groups, because self-directed learning and autonomous learning doesn't mean learning on your own in isolation. It means learning together, discussing things together, sometimes exploring things together with your peers. Record keeping is extremely important, because you need to think, where am I? What have I learned? Where is the record for it? What am I doing well in, and what do I need to do next? And then personal investment and identity is key. You can only be motivated and autonomous and want to learn something if the content is interesting to you, if it speaks to you, if you want to explore something because it is your personal interest. So this is extremely important for learners. And because this is ELT-related research, they talk a lot about the role of the target language, but that's not something that we today want to perhaps emphasize. And then the last important thing is teacher-learner roles. So in classrooms where learners are autonomous and self-directed, teachers are more facilitators. They learn from the students. They don't direct every part of the lesson. There are times in a lesson when teacher will guide the learners, help them, but the groups and the individuals get on with their learning. And I think this kind of initial frame works very well when it comes to investigating classrooms. So there's a lot of parallels between classroom investigations and autonomous language learning classrooms. So what does this mean for teachers and for teacher educators? As I said before, if you're encouraging your learners to be interested, to be motivated, to be autonomous, to be working in groups, to be exploring issues of interest, then they really do need to put that mirror in front of themselves and ask themselves, if I'm a role model and my learners are encouraged to be autonomous, then surely I need to be autonomous. I need to be exploring my learners and my classrooms and my practice. So what is then this investigation? What is research? There's so many definitions of research, and this is something I guess that we had to explore quite a bit in our project. And I've been talking and thinking about a research continuum. So a research project with a small r and a research project with a capital R are for me, are sitting on a continuum. So research is always about exploring things, finding answers, but exploring things in a systematic way. But academics can do it, teachers can do it, and even children can do it. If you're not familiar, maybe next time just Google children's research. There's plenty of literature on that in sociology and anthropology and in general education. Not so much in ELT, but it does exist. But are they the same? Of course not. They sit somewhere on this continuum. Maybe academic research is sitting somewhere higher at a prestige point where the findings all go into journals. Maybe teachers' research is more practical and feeds back into their practice. And children's research is also more practical and feeds back into their peer culture. So why were we interested in children's research? And actually, children's research was the starting point for our project. Well, because as I mentioned before, in sociology, in what we call childhood studies, this is a really important idea that children who have been traditionally seen as passive and uninterested and not really capable are suddenly seen as active and capable. So this is a big perspective change from reconsidering children's role in everywhere, really, not just in research, in everyday life as well. And rather than looking at them as vulnerable, passive, and unknowing and untrustworthy, we simply choose to look at them from a very different perspective. We talk about them as potentially experts of their own lives. And we, as adults, begin to think about, well, what is it that children can tell us that we don't know and we can't understand without actually the children's input? So this led to things like scholars, teachers, practitioners taking an interest in children's voices. And politically speaking, of course, this has been also bolstered by the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which a lot of countries are signed up to around the world, and which suggests that children have rights and have a voice, and this voice should be taken seriously and acted on. So again, this is a big area of literature and interest, and we don't have time to go into it, but just to say, as a consequence of all this, there is quite a lot of noise in the literature which suggests that children should be listened to much more in everyday teaching, and certainly could be listened to as part of classroom investigations. So our project was sort of framed as children as co-researchers alongside their teachers. And we simply wanted to see to what extent this would work. So just to recap, this is how we see the child researcher. Of course, they don't know anything about the research, so it's the teacher's job to begin to train them and to help them to become investigators and researchers. So this could be very practical things like learning to ask unambiguous questions in a survey, helping children to understand how to do a good little interview with a peer, that kind of thing. So growing from nothing, growing from a little seed into a seedling, kind of gaining rudimentary knowledge and understanding about what research is. Now, teachers and learners together as co-researchers looks like this, with plants. So the seeds are the children and the plants at the top are the teachers. So teachers probably don't start quite as much from zero as children might, but they also start potentially from less knowledge, and as they engage with the process of working together with children, they also gain more knowledge about co-researching in classrooms, learning from children, learning about the process, but also learning from other people who've done similar things. And we will show you some evidence from our data. The teachers said they grew in this process along with the children in their understanding and knowledge of research as a process, as well as a lot of other things. So I would like to now just pause a little bit, because I've been talking for a long time. So my question is, for the audience, have you ever included learners in your classroom investigations? Or the teachers you work with, do you know whether they have included their learners in classroom investigations? So as a teacher trainer, you might also be a practicing classroom teacher. Have you done this? Or if you're not currently a practicing teacher, have the teachers that you work with ever done this? So we would just love to see a quick yes and no to this question. And I understand I am to wait a few seconds until people reply so that we can see what the situation is in the audience. Okay, so that's very encouraging. So quite a few people have said yes, and some people have said no, so that's okay. So it will be interesting for us to hear about your background and your experience with regard to this. So I think we can close this now. And I have just got one more slide before I'm handing over to my colleague, Rama. Okay. Yeah, so we already know from the literature that teacher research, so teachers investigating their own classrooms, has got lots of benefits. So people like Simon Borg and Sanchez have written articles and books about this. Research can be transformative, but it's also problematic in the sense that very few teachers find the time and the opportunity and the support for this. And we also know that there are different types of research people can get involved in, like action research that Anne Burns has written a great deal about, or exploratory practice that Judith Hanks, following Allwright and working together with Allwright and colleagues, have written about. So this is different to action research because it actually involves the entire community, including the learners. And then we've also, I don't know, some of you may have not seen this, but there's also what we call exploratory action research that our colleague here at Warwick, Richard Smith, has been talking about. So the idea of this is that before you start your exploration, you first try and understand your classroom, which actually includes getting lots of feedback from your learners, understanding your learners and listening to their voices in a way. Okay, so with this little preamble finished, I'd like to hand over now to Rama, who's going to introduce the actual details of our project and some of our data. So Rama, can I just check you can move the slides from here, or I can move them for you?
Yeah, if you can,
Okay.
then you need to, yeah.
Yeah, so just
Okay.
tell me when you want the slides moved. So the next slide is up now.
Okay. So taking off from where Anna Maria has left off, as she said, we were very interested in looking at how teachers and children can work together as researchers, and what kind of understanding or satisfaction they can get out of this, and where it can continue, how it can continue. So in India, we took up a project. Anna Maria came over for short periods of time, over, I think, 2 years or so. So there were a group of 25 teachers and their children who were about all together 800 or so. And they were mentors among the teachers because they were involved in an earlier action research project with me. I'm in India and I was in Delhi University working as a teacher educator. And therefore I was involved in many projects. And so some of these teachers were already part of some other projects. And we held actually 3 workshops, across the year and a half. And then there was a big community developed. My colleagues and other teachers, the teachers' principals and their children, we all sort of became part of a community giving each other feedback. And we developed some ways of researching classrooms involving learners themselves. So teachers and learners were co-researchers in that case. Yeah. Next slide, if you don't. So how can children become co-researchers? We were trying out different ideas like participatory methods and children commenting on altering adult designed instruments. We'll give you some more details about this. And children also interviewing other children as part of their class work, class tasks, and more importantly, proposing new angles or new strategies, new ideas for how a regular or a usual class can be taught. So that became a topic for investigation. Investigation shouldn't be seen as a very serious sort of research bit, but then questioning, hypothesizing, being a little unhappy with what's going on and saying, can we do something differently, and so on. Yeah. So how does it work in practice? In fact, Anna Maria has already talked about autonomy, what it involves, and what are the characteristics of being autonomous. In a classroom, typically learners make choices. Of course, it could be on a continuum from restricted choices to a wild choice that's possible. Then they initiate activities and they suggest content. And then in our case, interestingly, they attended conferences with us. They came along and they gave their point of view. They presented what the teacher had done with them and why and what they learned and what they liked about it. It was fantastic. And they changed their views about schools and teachers. In fact, this whole thing was a continuously growing phenomenon. And then relationships improved, and in turn, motivation improved. So it kept going on and on in a spiral. It's not a linear kind of you begin from somewhere and then you end somewhere. We didn't know what the end would be, but then it kept developing. So that was very, very interesting for us. This is just a photograph to show how children had taken on different roles from the normal ones. Then they had started discussing, this was a kind of a presentation they made, and they would ask the teacher, so when is your next conference? So shall we do something else so that you can present it? So what is it that you want me to present? Because we have done this, but then you will need to do something more, building on this. So they became part of this entire program, as it were. So it was very interesting for us. This was a book we put together. It's called Children and Teachers as Co-Researchers, a Handbook of Activities. Other than this, a report exists. I think you saw it at the beginning of this presentation. But this one is particularly very, very interesting in the sense it contains 45 activities that teachers have carried out in their classrooms with children, as participants. And still you will see how, if you looked at each of these activities, they have been divided into several themes and then overlapping themes, of course. And what is nice about this is in each of these activities, you can see children have had a say in how classes should be conducted. For example, somebody says, can we not have this story at all, read to us at all. Then the teacher asks, what else do you want to read? Then say, can we make up our own story? Because these are very boring stories. And they go and make a story and so on. So this book, I'll talk to you about in a little more detail. Can we go on to the next one? This is one activity that I just want to show you. I won't go through all the details of the procedure here. So we also mentioned the age. This before I continue with this project, this work was for 8 to 14 years of children. So in this particular task, the teacher is saying, now the first procedure, if you read, first step, the idea came to me when a student chatted with me in the break. She suggested that children should write their own questions. And then they took it up seriously, and then they went through this whole thing, step by step. But I just want to tell you that this is not the way she did it, but then it got developed over iterative stages. And then when we were putting together the book, we sort of gave these as steps to be followed. But this is not to say that they're very they should be strictly followed, or it's very neatly put together for someone else to just replicate. No, not at all. So it's very research oriented, in which case we would like you to try out this. If not making questions, it could be the ending of a story. Even that was a task that another teacher did, depending on what students feel like. We'll go on to the next activity. This was another activity where, I would like to read the first part of the procedure. After our explorations into why some learners do better than others in exams, one of the questions we wanted to investigate was how participation in class might be important to, what it means is be important for doing well in exams. Then they tried to develop an understanding about how do we know where students are participating and what does it mean? How do we recognize active participation? Next slide. So they brainstormed and arrived at these indicators, as you can see. You can just quickly look at them. This is not to say this is exhaustive. They just developed this and made a checklist later on, and they started observing each other. Can you believe it? So we'll go on to the next one. So after identifying these behaviors, students in groups prepared a checklist and they started to observe each other. Every group presented their project. So it's like a small project that students take up, and the teacher is there to guide them. It is students' ideas very much, but then sometimes they may not have ideas, and then teacher says, would you like to do this? You said so or something, but shall we do this? And so on. So it takes shape as they go along. Then you can give it a kind of an ending, which is a video presentation or a play that they may put up in many classes. In fact, you will see many tasks where the students have put up plays as a kind of a end result of something that they made puppets, and then they told stories, and then they put up a show. So what I'm trying to demonstrate through this is just 2 examples, is that there is a research approach to this whole book that we are recommending. It's not a finished set of activities that we are saying, go and try this out, but then it's very research oriented. So teachers and students will have to take that questioning and documenting kind of an approach. And that's what is research according to us. It's not a very big word, but we are saying researcher in that kind of a sense where there is a chance and opportunity for everyone to question, hypothesize, come back if necessary, and then modify and keep this process going. Of course, continue. Next slide. So, there is some evidence here of what teachers learned and what teachers felt. We just take a look at that quickly.
So, Rama, sorry to interrupt, but we were going to give a chance for potential comments at this point.
Okay. All right.
So this gives the audience another quick breather. If there are any questions, if not, then we can carry on. So I guess it's over to Sirin.
Okay.
Yes, actually, there are some really nice comments. Malika says, I'm inspired with the idea of teachers and learners as co-researchers. Another teacher educator mentioned that in Ethiopia, this is rare. And Mekurio mentioned what an insightful session it is. So we also have one question from Adrian. How can I inspire my students to ask more questions to make them more interested in the topic? So how can we ensure active participation for learners and for teachers? How do you encourage this?
Yeah,
Okay,
would you like to answer that, Anna Maria?
Okay, so I guess for me, maybe Rama will add something. For me, I think it comes back to that basic point of taking learners seriously. So taking feedback from learners, asking them about what they like, what they don't like, and why. Taking an interest in what they want to do and what they might suggest as modifications or new topic areas. And I think it's very important to work with those ideas rather than just take the ideas and put them in a drawer, so to speak. You know, ask the learners, get the feedback, and then do nothing with it. I think that's a big mistake. If you're really truly interested, then you should be able to work out modifications, questions that you're both interested in, issues and topics that you can work on, even if you're restricted by examination and a fairly strict curriculum. You can have these discussions, these choices, these opportunities for learners to get engaged, even within a restricted curriculum. Of course, if you've got a less restrictive curriculum, then it's even better. But learners have suggested, for example, ways in which you can prepare for an exam, and they made groups and had ideas about how to prepare for an exam in a more fun way or in a more innovative way. And that's already a very good step forward, even though they're perhaps preparing for an exam that, you know, we might kind of not fully agree with. But I guess it's this idea of taking their voices seriously, and when you first ask them, they may not take you seriously, they may not believe that you're serious, and that's the reason why you have to persevere and you have to make this into a real questioning where you take the voices and the opinions seriously. Mm-hmm. Rama, do you want to add anything?
I just want to add here that these teachers were, you know, people who already were feeling a little claustrophobic or a bit unhappy with what this mundane usual teaching that went on. And many of them felt a little stifled, a little restricted, because they thought that the school is putting that kind of pressure on them. But when we started talking to them, it looked like they were not all that helpless. They could do something in their own classrooms, even if not with the curriculum, with the exam, schemes and so on. They could do things in their classrooms, and they wanted to try that out. And then they said, they came and told us, I'm going to ask my children what it is that they don't like about my teaching, what it is that they don't like in the textbook or even exams. And then there was a host of ideas and suggestions and, things. And you can make that into a small project, which somebody did actually. And even about exams, they said, why is it that many students fail in the exam, but they do well in their class tests and things like that? And then they go and investigate it. They develop tools that the teacher, they work with. So even in a very traditional kind of a setup, you can turn it into a kind of a chance for asking questions and then doing very little about it. So one point also that I want to make here is that it's not like they are doing fantastic, superb things. It's they start from where they are at. Teachers and teacher educators should start from where the participants are at, and then take them one step at a time. So that's progress for us. So it's not something, it may be happening already in a much better way in some other kind of context, But then in these contexts where children come from poor backgrounds, and then, then even to get rags, pieces of cloth, and then to make a puppet is a big thing for them. They have made the puppet, they have made a story around it, and they have told it to each other. So that's a big thing. So from there they go on from small to smaller, but bigger, and so on, and that gives them a lot of satisfaction. So teachers saw that this did give them a lot of what do you call it? A lot of happiness and a lot of the empowerment kind of thing. They felt empowered and they wanted to continue with that. And students felt empowered that teacher is not thrusting things on them, and they said now we can ask anything and the teacher is willing to listen. And it was like a one-to-one kind of a thing. I'll show you some evidence from what teachers have said from these projects, and I think that will help. That will give us an idea of what it is. Shall we? Yeah.
Thank you, Anna Maria and Rama. And one more question: is age? Can all age groups be children researchers? Amina is asking. So, is this important? Is age relevant to your approach to encouraging autonomy? Eric has also a comment. This is a very productive and can be implemented at different learning levels. So he has demonstrated this with more advanced learners. So would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, so just very briefly, with regard to age, again, I would recommend anyone interested, just Google it. There are fantastic opportunities even for preschool children for getting involved in research in active ways. They can draw, they can talk, you can have mobile interviews, they can document things. There is a method or an approach called the mosaic approach, which is very famous and well researched for younger children, involving younger children in research. But of course, all age groups, you can do this with all age groups, depending on the sophistication and their level of understanding and how able and they are to question things and how used to they are to being asked, first of all. You would have to build on where they are at, but it can certainly be used with all age groups. Some of this work, of course, may have to be done in a stronger language, in multilingual context that could be relying on a repertoire of linguistic resources. In monolingual context, some of this has to be in the native language rather than the target language. But again, bilingual products, bilingual presentations, or English presentations, or English exhibitions and plays and shows, they're all going to be worth it in the end, even if some of the preparation work and some of the research process was done in a different language or in a combination of languages.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So we have some more questions, but let's continue. Everyone, I would like to encourage you to write your questions in the Q&A. So we will have another Q&A at the end of the session. Thank you.
Okay, Sirin, thank you very much. So Rama will continue now with some of the evidence from the data with the teachers.
So as this project continued with intermediary workshops and then tasks developing with students' participation, students' inputs into it, the teacher got quite a few insights and then shared them with the children, and then the children in turn shared their insights and excitement. This kind of a exciting journey continued. So some of the quotations that tell us about what journey they went on is here. So something like, when I participate in the learning with the students, when I'm part of the learning, then they perform better, because they realize this ma'am, that is the teacher, is also learning. So usually the teacher knows all kind of an image exists in students. In fact, they hesitate to give a final answer. They say, you tell us what's right, and that kind of a situation. But then here they could see that the teacher was also very wasn't showing, was very modest or very really in a very serious way, trying to understand what they had to say or do. So they realize that she's also learning, and they performed better because of that. Here, change reported in learners. My children now will not accept anything ready-made. They want to do things for themselves. So they would like to try it out. Shall we do it this way? Shall we do that? So in fact, there are a whole lot of things that they line up for experimentation, if you like. And the teacher will have to choose, shall we do this first? Shall we do the other one next? And so on. Sometimes there has been a question about, does it interfere with the curriculum, especially if they're slightly older children and so on. They work it out. But in fact, you can see that every little bit of what they bring to the class is part of the curriculum. It's not outside, as it were. So it's a question of how you integrate it, how you understand curriculum to be. Some teachers who believe that curriculum is in the textbooks. In India, textbooks are very, very, like sacrosanct, and they have to be gone through. But then they see another way around it. So they don't have to go through every page, but then they deal with it in a different way. Here they have a choice and a voice, and they listen to me much better, and the quality of learning has got better. So there is a give and take kind of a context where everyone is listening, everyone is learning. So it's a very happy atmosphere. And as Anna Maria said, English is not coming in the way of their expression or reading, writing. Our teachers and teacher educators also started reading some articles and so on. Anna Maria and I were there to support them, and they learned. They liked it a lot. They learned a good deal about L2 development, about involvement of learners, how you work with children, but not you do experiments on children. Here, teachers had not documented anything very consciously, but here they started doing that, writing journals. And I think these workshops and then the small seminars that we had contributed to this coming together and sharing among teachers a lot. And I think that's very important. So I would like to suggest that teacher educators, when they are doing this kind of thing with teachers, please, think of a slot where you come together and share what you're doing. And then they realize that the other teachers are going through something similar. They're all in the same boat, is what they say. And then they get stimulation from the other people, and they continue. As I mentioned earlier also, in our seminars, we had invited many different kinds of people, including children themselves. So teachers are saying, I used to be very, teachers are scared of university teachers, school teachers. So here they saw Anna Maria from Warwick University and me from Delhi University talking their language and trying to understand them in a genuine way. So they were very, they became comfortable, and they appreciated that a lot. They say that comfort level which they found, helped them to participate wholeheartedly. So there is, in fact, the community is continuing. They have become mentors. They help other teachers. It's not only the label teacher educator in a college of education or wherever who should help teachers, but then teachers help each other from one school and another within the school. So this continues. Yeah. It's not just about English, it's about our relationships. Yeah, bonding was much, much better because of this. And there's, in fact, if you have some time later on, do look at the activity books, and then there are many activities that talk specifically about bonding, specifically about, going to a community, children who can't even afford to come to school, talking to them what it means and writing about it. In typical Indian schools, writing is usually, a very convoluted kind of a task. Write about your holidays or something like that, stupid. And they don't write, or they write stock sentences, which they have learned by heart. But when here they interview other children, they talk to their own parents, they make a small questionnaire, or they write about a book that they have read, then there is a context for writing. So they see that, teachers have seen that writing improved a lot. And many teachers encourage writing in Hindi, English together in a bilingual way. And that gave rise to a lot of personal expression. Yeah, over to you, Anna-Marie.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Rama. So if we have time, we've got a very short extract here from one of our teachers, Esther, who's here talking about her experience on the project. And in terms of teacher educators and what they can do and how they can encourage teachers to research their own classrooms, I think it's very clear here that she's discussing what was the change for her, what was the particular learning point that made her more convinced, and why this practice is now sustainable. She doesn't need anybody anymore to tell her, do this, do that, explore this, explore that, because she's on that journey of her own. And I think it's this idea of go and speak to your children and go and ask your children and work with your children, which is going to unlock potentially that opportunity for a change. But I don't want to put words into her mouth, so let's listen to her.
I'm Esther. Did a project with the British Council on children as co-researchers in the Indian classrooms, and it was a lovely journey, a wonderful journey. This is a thing that I never thought of, that children could be co-researchers along with me, because it was always, I thought that I would do the best activities with the children and the learning has to come from me, for them. But then when this project came over, I thought about it. It was an interesting thing. First I thought, how would I do it? But then when maybe I underestimated the children of my class. But they are the ones, many times I found them to be my mentors. Like, for example, I'll give an example. This was a child who didn't really like writing, but when we did this project, he comes to me and he says, "Ma'am, many of us don't want to write on a topic that maybe you give. Probably we'll do something. We will write the news around us. So let's make a file where every day whoever one of us would like to come and write the newspaper, the news around us. So that way, ma'am, Hindi as well as our mother tongue and English, we will improve in that." So, that's the sort of thing that comes from them. And given the space, they were the ones who took over finally. Like with the lessons that we were doing, they would think of the ending of the lesson, how they would like to see the ending of some lesson, or the story writing, or sharing, or the things that they wanted to express. So those all came. But now when the project is over, I find those students to be still the same. They're continuing with that. Their language has improved. And these students who have gone to, because our school is up to class grade 8, when they go to 9th grade, the teacher of that school, he found them to be different. So he got back to find out what made these children different from the ones that he was teaching. And it was like such a wow experience to think that these students who've been co-researchers along with me are doing so well. They're so confident, their language improved. And and as for me, this has become a routine now. It's gone are the days when I thought that I was the only one who was teaching them. Now it's like it's a collaborative thing. What they want, how they want, and that's such a positive thing because the results are better. They are doing like for the holiday homework, when they draft their own holiday homework, they do it better. The results are better. Many students who never used to do it, now they are doing it. So it's a joy. It's a joy to have my children. We are doing, we being together as researchers, and every time it's become a part of me now. So I'm happy that way.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that that short extract from a teacher. So we're finished now. I just would like to use this last slide to recap. So about the factors that perhaps teacher educators could focus on when it's about the development of self-directed learning for teachers. So obviously, Rama mentioned this at the beginning, that there needs to be willingness and readiness from the teacher's point of view to want to change, to want to develop. You can't force it on people. You can't say you must do this, you must be committed. The teachers need to feel ready to engage with development. We think that the original focus of the project, that is focus on the children as researchers, was also the core, the starting point, the spark of the development, because the active participation of the learners puts a mirror in front of the teacher, you know, for the active participation of the teacher and the learning journey of the teacher. So a clear message here is get your teachers to get feedback from the learners that they take seriously. The structure of the project is important. We worked together for the best of 2 years, and actually we're still in touch and continuing conversation with some of the teachers. So to have the space, the time to share experience and to share successes and to share questions and dilemmas is also very important. There are no right answers. Something might work in one classroom, but not in another. And it's important for teachers to share and experience that. The learning community is important. We were learning as much as the teachers, as much as the children. We were all learners. And actually, we see teaching and learning and researching are just the same thing looked at from a different point of view. School support is important. So isolated teachers will find this more difficult. And in our group, there were some schools where they were much better supported than others. And of course, a potential change in identity that we saw in Esther's case, when a teacher says, actually, now this is routine, I do this all the time, this has become part of me, is an important indicator that development is happening and healthy teacher development is happening. So co-researching with your learners doesn't need to be serious research. There are degrees of it. You can start small, but our final message to each teacher educator is educators is encourage your teachers to work with their learners. So thank you very much. We're going to stop here, and I guess we will be very happy to answer some of the questions if we still have time. I don't know whether Sirin wants to feed us some questions, and of course maybe Rama wants to say a few final words.
Just one thing that, you know, it doesn't have to be a hierarchical structure, that is teacher educator to teacher to learner. You might hold such a position, but then very quickly, if you believe in autonomy, if you believe in the involvement of learners, here there are 3-4 levels of learners and teachers. Everyone is a teacher, everyone is a learner. Like, you know, Paulo Freire said. So everyone is learning and everyone is teaching. So once that hierarchy is broken, which is what these teachers told us as well, I think then the job is done, or you are on the right path, I would say, on a learning path, on an experimenting path, on a research. Do give that handbook a good look. I think there are quite a few things that you can pick up and do something with in your class, whatever your class. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think we need to try and see how it goes. So Almira and Dinar asked questions about power relations in the classroom. You also mentioned this briefly. So how might the role of students becoming co-researchers during the lesson affect power relations? Were there any teacher-learner power relations observed in the study, considering the role of the teacher as a guide? Or how can teachers balance their role as a guide and leader with the need to give learners choice and voice in their own learning? Can you just mention this part, please?
Shall I? Yeah, well, okay, so I start. So yes, power relationships are important, and wherever we are, schools and society, there's always a hierarchical relationship between adults and learners and children. So I think it's important within classrooms to at least try to work towards more democratic relationships. Of course, it doesn't mean that there are no rules, there's no respect. In fact, mutual respect is the basis of everything, and certain things are not acceptable. But with those guidelines, I think it's very important to be respectful, to listen to each other, and to have a community in your classroom where everybody's voice is important and gets listened to, rather than just immediately dismissed or disregarded. So those who write about this talk about pockets of democratic opportunities. Even if your entire school is not democratically structured, you could have pockets of democratic activity within your own classrooms. But of course, we are very aware of the hierarchical power structures everywhere around us, and we have to work within the restrictions of those.
Mm-hmm. What I would like to say is, when we were doing this project, and to some extent that continues even now because I keep in touch with those teachers, these students who got such a lot out of this kind of an approach, they started talking to their friends in other classes, and then those children would come and ask this teacher, can you come to our class also and do something similar? And then those children would go to their teacher and say, why aren't you doing it this way? Why aren't you asking us to give our views or make stories or do something? So this was a very infectious kind of an atmosphere, very positive. And then the principal comes to know of it and say, parents seem to be very excited about their children doing these many things. And they're saying, what is it? Sometimes the parents would say, what's your teacher doing if you're doing all the teaching? You know, it can be a little tricky, but then it was all going in a positive direction. And so many teachers have said, even if I want to stop this approach, the children won't let me. So that's democratic approach, the researching approach, and then, you know, giving a space and voice to the learner. I don't know if it can change just because the teacher might resign and leave the job and go away, but I think it continues, you know, even if it isn't a project anymore. So I'm very hopeful. It's a very, once you begin and once you taste this kind of an approach, I think people take to it very, very well.
Yes, that's great. It's going to have a really a big impact on the children's and teachers' professional development as well. You also mentioned that the importance of teachers feeling secure and supported, and you mentioned some challenges in the report. What are the barriers developing autonomy for teachers?
You want to answer?
Sorry, Serena, I didn't understand. You asking about the challenges, or what are the something in relation to autonomy?
Yes,
the challenges in the project.
Yes, but from teacher development point of view.
Okay. Yeah, so I think certainly one challenge is the support or perhaps the lack of support in schools. So this kind of approach can thrive when everybody is on board. And also some of the teachers feel that a bit of recognition from their colleagues would be a very positive thing. And recognition of achievement, maybe the ability to disseminate, the ability to get formally recognized in a school. So these kinds of things are important, I think, for a developing teacher researcher. Maybe the resources and the means to be able to go to conferences, for example. So that's a good way to feel empowered and to feel ready to share your experience in a more formal way with bigger audiences. And I guess these were not necessarily readily available in all schools.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as our learning community could support the teachers, we were a learning community, and in many ways we are still a learning community because we're still in touch with each other every now and then. But that's not necessarily enough for teacher development, I think, to be effective. It's better if the entire school is on board. So another way of organizing something like this could be or would be to work with teachers in a particular school and to extend this to ideas, across the board, not just in English language classrooms, but in other kinds of subject areas as well.
Definitely, the school climate is very important. So finally, before we wrap up, what is your number one advice to a teacher educator who would like to start this in the training room, to start discussion around the benefits of autonomy and encouraging teachers to be co-researchers with their learners?
Rama, do you want to go first? Because you're the more experienced teacher educator, probably.
I would say, first of all, I'm wearing a teacher educator's hat, but I'm a teacher myself, right? So I've got two hats at least, and I'm a learner. So I think every teacher educator must acknowledge this. And then, I don't know, I can't say tell the teacher this, no advice, but then let's start the journey together is my sort of first sentence. Let's get on with it. Let's do something that's meaningful to us, that's enjoyable, that learners like and we like. We are in the same profession, and I include the learners in that professional journey as well. So without the learners telling us or giving us feedback or taking part in this very, overt way, professional development for me is incomplete. And therefore, I would take everybody along. That's what I would start saying and doing. Mm. Then I'll say, shall we do something like this? What interests you all? So I take them along. I think that's my advice.
Definitely. And Anna Maria, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, well, I agree entirely with what Rama said. I think that's kind of the crux of it. I mean, I put it in a slightly different way, and we learned this actually from our teachers and this project. We learned that how we handled ourselves and how we handled the workshops when we came together and discussed what was going in their classrooms. They asked us questions, we asked them questions, we were learning from them, they were learning from us. Mm-hmm. What happened in the workshops was then directly translated into what happened in the teachers' classrooms. Mm-hmm. So how you handle yourself and how you handle yourself as a co-researcher or co-learner or co-collaborator in the situation, I think is very important. It's to walk the talk, if you know what I mean. So it's important to also kind of look in the mirror and ask yourself, as a teacher educator, am I a good role model? Am I actually asking my participants am I giving voice to everybody? Am I doing the sorts of things that people are interested in and people are excited about? But I think this has got a lot of synergy with what Rama has said. I'm just using a slightly different set of words to express it. But it is a learning community, and everyone has the same voice, and that's important. And what is exciting? What is a good starting point for you to explore and ask questions about is important.
Yes, definitely. And I hope these communities across the world will start after this session. Our participants share some comments saying that the idea is very innovative, transformative, very interesting, insightful. So thank you very much once again for sharing your insightful session and ideas with us, this research. So I'd like to remind our colleagues that there are 2 publications that support this webinar. So one of them is Children and Teachers as Co-Researchers. This is the report, and there is also a handbook of activities which offers a set of activities for teachers that teachers tried out in the Indian classroom settings. So you can find both of them in the chat and on our webinar page. And finally, I'd like to remind you that we have a new CPD framework and a self-assessment tool for teacher educators. You can find the links in the chat. The recording of the webinar and the slides will be available on Teaching English in the next couple of days. The link to the certificate will be provided in the thank you email that you'll receive tomorrow. Please share your feedback with us. You will see the feedback form in the chat. And don't forget to subscribe to our monthly newsletter for teacher educators. Finally, please register for our next webinar, which is about artificial intelligence, opportunities and challenges with Nick Peachy on 9th of May. So we very much hope to see you all again in the future sessions. And thank you so much once again, Anna-Maria and Rama, for this session. So we hope you will continue collaborating, and we will also collaborate in the future. We'll have more stories like this project in the future.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.